Okay, so picture this, right? You're on a packed bus, rush hour, everyone's stressed, and suddenly,
Ugh, tell me about it.
right, but then the bus driver, with just a smile and a few kind words, totally changes the vibe.
It's amazing how someone can do that.
Totally. And that's what got me thinking about this book you sent over, Emotional Intelligence.
By Daniel Goleman.
Yes. He'd probably say the bus driver's secret weapon,
Mm,
emotional intelligence, or EQ.
EQ, yeah. You know, it's interesting because for so long we've been told that IQ is everything.
Like, if you don't have a high IQ, you're sunk.
Right. But Goldman really challenges that. He makes a really strong case for why EQ, that emotional intelligence, is just as important, maybe even more so.
Yeah, he really drives that point home, doesn't he? Like, he talks about kids, right, who totally lose it over small stuff.
Oh, absolutely. Like getting called a name or even just a little bump and they
And
just...
explode. It's like, where's that coming
Oh.
from?
And he contrasts those examples with that calm bus driver. And you start to realize just how powerful our emotions are.
It's kind of scary, actually, how much control they have over us.
It is. And often we're not even aware of it. Goleman talks about how these emotional reactions we have, they're deeply ingrained from
Yeah.
like way
I
back.
mean, like caveman days.
Basically, back then, that fight or flight response, it was essential for survival.
Run from the saber-toothed tiger or be lunch.
Exactly. But the thing is, those ancient responses, they don't always work so well in today's world.
Like, our brains haven't gotten the memo that we're not in the jungle anymore.
Exactly. And that's why, someone might overreact to a spilled coffee or a rude email.
It's like their inner caveman is having a moment.
Something like that. And here's the thing. Goleman argues that our childhood, those early experiences, they play a huge role.
Oh, yeah, like how our parents responded to our emotions when we were kids.
Exactly. Those early lessons, they shape how we deal with our own emotions as adults, how we build relationships, how we cope with stress.
So we're basically wired in childhood for how we handle emotions as adults.
To a large extent, yes. And that's why it's so important to provide kids with a nurturing, supportive environment where they can develop that emotional intelligence.
This is already blowing my mind, and it makes you realize just how important this all is, right?
Absolutely. It's not just about feelings. This stuff impacts every aspect of our lives.
Okay, so we've established EQ is important, but what does it actually look like? Because Goleman, he breaks it down, right?
It does. Into 5 core components: self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, empathy, and social skills. And it's really interesting is that these aren't just things you're born with, they're skills you can learn and develop.
Like, we can actually get better at this stuff.
Absolutely. And that's what makes this so hopeful.
Okay, I am so ready to dive into these components. Let's start with self-awareness. It's got to be the foundation, right? But what does it actually mean? Is it like constantly analyzing every single emotion you have? Like, why am I feeling slightly irritated by that bird singing?
Oh, not quite.
So not quite like overthinking the bird song, got it. But seriously, how do we actually cultivate self-awareness?
Well, think of it like this. It's about honestly tuning in to your own emotional landscape. Being aware of your feelings and how they influence you. It's not about, like you said, overanalyzing every little thing. It's more about recognizing patterns, your own personal patterns.
Okay, so like noticing if I always get snappy when I'm hungry, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Or if certain people or situations tend to trigger specific emotions in you.
Right, makes sense. And I remember Goleman talks about this guy, Elliot.
Oh, yeah, Elliot. His story is incredible, isn't it?
It's wild. So remind me again what happened to him.
So Elliot had a brain tumor,
Okay.
and they were able to remove it successfully. But afterwards...
This is where it gets interesting.
Totally. So cognitively, he was fine, like thinking skills, all good. But his emotional life, totally different story.
Like his personality changed.
In a way. See, the tumor, even though it was benign, it was located in his prefrontal cortex. That's the part of the brain that's responsible for regulating emotions, planning, making decisions, all of that.
Oh, wow. Important stuff.
Crucial. And so when they removed the tumor, it's like that connection between his thinking and his feeling, it got severed.
So he could think clearly, but he couldn't feel his emotions.
Kind of. He could experience emotions, but they weren't connected to his choices anymore. Like he couldn't feel the weight of his decisions.
So he might make a decision that logically made sense, but emotionally, it was off.
Exactly. And it really messed things up for him in his life. Like his relationship suffered, his work suffered, everything.
Wow, that is such a powerful example of how important this all is.
It really is. It shows that emotional intelligence, it's not just some abstract idea, it's deeply rooted in our
It's
brains.
like literally wired into us.
Exactly.
And it makes you realize how important it is to be able to manage these emotions, right?
Which takes us to the next component, self-regulation. Right. Because we all have emotions, right? But it's how we manage them that really matters.
And that's what self-regulation is all about, being in control.
Exactly. It's about not letting your emotions run the show. It's about being able to, take a breath, think things through, and then respond in a way that aligns with your values.
Easier said than done sometimes.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
But like any skill, it takes practice. And this is where Goleman talks about that famous marshmallow test.
Oh, yeah, the one with the kids. I've heard about that. Remind me how it worked again.
So they basically put a marshmallow in front of a child,
Okay.
and they tell the child, you can eat this marshmallow now, or you can wait a little while and you can have 2 marshmallows.
Oh, the ultimate test of willpower.
Right. And so they leave the child alone with the marshmallow, and they watch what they do. Do they eat it right away? Or can they delay that gratification?
And what do they find?
Well, what's amazing is that the kids who were able to wait to delay their gratification, they tended to have better outcomes later in life, like better grades, better social skills, even higher salaries.
Get out. All from resisting a marshmallow.
I know, it's incredible.
Yeah.
But it makes sense, right? Because those kids, they were exercising that self-regulation muscle. They were learning to control their impulses and make choices that would benefit them in the long run.
Wow, powerful stuff. Okay, so we've got self-awareness, self-regulation. What's next on our EQ journey?
Let's talk about motivation. Now, when you hear that word, what do you think of?
So we've been talking about motivation, right? But when we talk about motivation in this context of emotional intelligence, it's not just about like getting psyched up to hit the gym or finish a project, is it?
Right, it goes deeper than that. It's about that inner drive, that passion and resilience that keeps you going, even when things get tough.
And this makes me think about that concept of flow. Like when you're so absorbed in what you're doing, you completely lose track of time.
Absolutely. Goleman talks about flow as this state of optimal experience where you're totally engaged, your skills match the challenge, and you just feel this incredible sense of satisfaction.
It's like being in the zone, right? Where everything just clicks.
Exactly. And, studies show that people who experience flow regularly, they tend to be more motivated, more productive, and just happier overall.
Okay, so how do we get more of that flow in our lives? Is it just about finding the right work?
Well, it's partly about finding work that lights you up, definitely. But it's also about approaching any task, even everyday stuff, with that sense of mindfulness and intention.
So like even doing the dishes can become a flow state if you approach it the right way.
Exactly. It's about being fully present in that moment, not letting your mind wander to your to-do list or what's for dinner. And Goleman gives some great tips on how to cultivate that mindfulness.
This is fascinating stuff.
Hmm.
But we've got to talk about the other people, right?
Yeah.
Because EQ isn't just about understanding ourselves, it's about understanding others too.
Absolutely. And that's where empathy comes in, the 4th component of emotional intelligence. And you could argue it's the most important.
Empathy. Okay, so we all know empathy is important, right? It's about putting yourself in someone else's shoes. But what does it really look like in action?
It's about truly understanding and sharing the feelings of others, even if you don't agree with them. It's about really listening, picking up on those nonverbal cues, their tone of voice, the body language.
It's like tuning into their emotional frequency, right? And that takes effort, especially in today's world where everyone's so quick to judge and react.
It does. But the rewards are huge because empathy is the foundation of strong relationships, both personally and professionally. It allows us to connect on a deeper level, to navigate conflict more effectively, to build trust.
It's like empathy is the glue that holds everything together.
Exactly. And Goleman, he makes such a compelling argument for why we need more empathy in the world, especially now. He says it's essential for creating a more compassionate, understanding, and just generally better society.
Okay, so we're all on board with empathy. But the question is, can you actually learn to be more empathetic? Or are some people just born with it?
That's a great question. And the good news is, yes, empathy is a skill you can develop just like any other. It takes practice, it takes conscious effort, but it's definitely possible to become more attuned to the feelings of others.
That's encouraging to hear. And it brings us to the final component of emotional intelligence. Social skills.
Right, because it's one thing to understand your own emotions and empathize with others, but we also need to be able to interact effectively in the social world, right?
It's like social skills are how we put all this emotional intelligence into action.
Precisely. And Goleman talks about social skills as a broad range of abilities, things like communication, conflict resolution, building rapport, being a good listener, being able to influence and inspire others.
And these skills, they're essential in every aspect of life, right? From
Yeah.
our personal relationships to our careers to how we navigate the world around us.
Exactly. And the thing is, just like the other components of EQ, social skills can be learned and improved upon. There are techniques we can practice, strategies we can use to become more effective communicators and build stronger relationships.
This has been an incredible deep dive, and I'm feeling so inspired right now. But I have to ask, you've given us all this amazing information, but what's the one key takeaway you hope our listeners walk away with?
I think the most important thing to remember is that emotional intelligence matters. It matters in our personal lives, in our work, in our communities, and in the world at large. And the best part is, it's not something we're stuck with. We can all learn and grow and become more emotionally intelligent no matter where we're starting from. And that's a really empowering message.
Absolutely. And, when you think about the challenges we're facing in the world today, from climate change to political polarization to just the everyday stresses of modern life, it seems like we need more emotional intelligence now more than ever.
I completely agree. And I think the more we can cultivate these skills in ourselves and teach them to our children, the better equipped we'll be to navigate these challenges and create a more compassionate, understanding, and ultimately more successful world.
That is the perfect note to end on. This has been an amazing conversation. I feel like I've learned so much. So, to our listeners, we encourage you to pick up a copy of Emotional Intelligence by Daniel Goleman. It's a fascinating read full of insights and practical tips that you can apply to your own life. And who knows, maybe it'll even inspire you to start your own EQ journey.
And remember, it's a journey, not a destination. So be patient with yourself, keep learning, keep growing, and keep exploring the incredible power of emotional intelligence.